Warning, the following program was produced for traditional broadcast television. Over 12 minutes of commercials have been removed, but interruptions are still included. Thank you for watching.
The states that raise their minimum wage to $15 an hour have, on average, become more expensive at a faster rate.
Raising the minimum wage to solve these problems is like putting a Band-Aid on a wound that's infected with a flesh-eating bacteria.
We got to keep talking, got to keep educating people on inflation and on sound money, while also not doing something that is only going to cause further harm. Minimum wage laws harm the people that they are designed to help.
The thing that we face that ills us, we're using a fast, easy money that leads to debt, inflation, robs us through hidden taxation.
Government officials insist we will continue to keep you informed as this story unfolds.
Welcome to the Money Block with Matthew J. Moore, the Bitcoin-focused program that's waking the masses to the fiat money Ponzi scheme. Money is changing, and your freedom is at stake. So stick around and learn how to empower yourself for this new digital age. Now, here's your host, Matthew J. Moore.
And welcome, America. Welcome, world. Man, we want to welcome you to the Money Block. We are syndicated coast to coast. That's right. From east to west of America, we're here to talk about Bitcoin, sound money, things that are going to touch your life, your budget, your family. And, understanding Bitcoin, understanding sound money is one element, but things are getting expensive and people are trying to raise the minimum wage. And we're going to talk about that today. We got a perfect guest to unpack this, to kind of dive into why wages aren't keeping up and what can be done and what people are trying to do. To help me with that is going to be our wonderful guest from the Oklahoma Council of Public Affairs. He's the Vice President of Legal Affairs. I just want, before I bring him on for the full conversation here and introduce this topic, if you're watching online, if you are tuned in, give us a like, comment, subscribe, share, be a part of the conversation. Let us know what you think when it comes to this topic. Maybe you're feeling the pinch. But on the line is Ryan Haynie, and Ryan, he's here in my home state, and so this matter is going to be touching him pretty closely too, because we got a state question 832 that we're going to be voting on June 16th. But this is not just Oklahoma; this is nationwide. Can you speak to this, Ryan? When it comes to this initiative that's going on, people trying to raise the minimum wage, is this a growing trend across America? Maybe more so than just in the New Yorks and Californias.
No, that's exactly right. Thanks for having me on, Matt. We typically think of, I think, minimum wage laws and ballot initiatives as sort of being this big blue state thing, right? These blue states have some of the craziest minimum wage laws in the country, and they also, states like California, do a ton of stuff through ballot questions, right? We're always hearing about prop this and prop that in the state of California because that's how they get some of their craziest policy through into law. But it's not stopping there. So this summer in June, on the June primary ballot, Oklahomans are going to be voting on this. We've seen recently states like neighboring Missouri and Arkansas pass minimum wage ballot questions through their states as well. And so we're trying to do what has not been done, which nobody's really stepped up to fight and to push back and to say this is not good policy. And we hope that we're the first state to successfully push back and defeat one of these.
Oh, so you're saying that when this is done on a ballot with a question, a state question like that's getting ready to happen in Oklahoma, you're saying that more likely than not it passes?
I'm saying that it has never. The only minimum wage ballot question that has ever been defeated was a California one where it was already high and they just decided not to take it higher. So when we're talking about like an initial jump, again, red states like Missouri and Arkansas, they've already passed this. But a lot of it's because, quite frankly, people are not stepping up and fighting back.
Wow.
And so that's what we're trying to do. And hopefully we can make history and defeat this kind of left coast model.
Wow. Well, and if you're listening to this program, it's not because we're trying to be unkind to workers. In fact, I'm very passionate about this. We're trying to go to the root the root cause, share what's going to happen if something like this does pass. And that's why I do this show, The Money Block, is to talk about sound money, to talk about the disease that's robbing us of our purchasing power. But let's carry on in the next segment. You guys stay put, stay tuned. We got a lot to cover. We'll be right back after this break. What does it mean to be physically, spiritually, and financially free? The right to life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness, these were the ideas that made America. But what happens to these ideas when America's money becomes compromised? What do you do when the very thing that you're working for day after day is fundamentally designed to enslave you? Whether it was a conspiracy or not, you won't believe what is about to happen in this country. Arm yourself today with the truth and build your life on the foundations for liberty. Rediscover freedom in the 21st century and grab a copy of my Amazon best-selling book, Foundations for Liberty. For just $11.99, you can support this radio show by finding a copy on Amazon or by going to mattjmoore.com. Again, that's mattjmoore.com. Don't wait, because freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. All right, and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is round two, segment 2 of the Money Block. And if you're watching this and you're new to crypto, you're new to Bitcoin, you're new to the idea of sound money, the concepts of monetary policy, maybe you've heard things like Keynesian economics, Austrian economics. Well, we cover a lot of that. I know it sounds super heady, but it's really, once you understand it at a basic level, it starts to make sense. But today, we've got a wonderful conversation. We're going to be talking about this problem that's facing the nation, and especially here in Oklahoma as well. As there seems to be a trend to push, to grow, and to take the minimum wage to a higher level, and to really rob us of voluntary opportunities and agreements. And so we're going to dive into not only the potential solution, but also the outcomes if measures like these continue to pass in states like not just California and New York, but Oklahoma, Missouri, wherever. The dollar is not buying as much as it used to. People are feeling it, and they're wanting solutions. So, but before we dive into it, I just want to let you know that you're going to see a QR code. It's going to pop up right over there. If you're new to these topics, maybe you're new to understanding how money actually works, where it comes from, what gives it value, well, you can download my digital copy of my Amazon best-selling book, Foundations for Liberty. Just get out your phone, scan that QR code. It'll help you through this educational process. It's my way of saying, hey, thanks for tuning in. All right, well, on the line, we've got our guest, Ryan Haynie. He's the VP of Legal Affairs at the Oklahoma Council of Public Affairs, right here in my own backyard. Ryan, before we went to break, we were kind of teasing the topic, letting people know what our conversation today was going to be about. But let's get into the meat of things. Americans across the country are struggling. I think a lot of people realize, they say inflation's only 2%. Well, at least that's the target. Well, we all know that the way they measure inflation has changed, and things are getting expensive. And so let's talk about this here. When it comes to laws around minimum wage, are these just people like lawmakers and citizens that are misinformed on the potential solution? Because it seems to me that raising the minimum wage to solve these problems is like putting a Band-Aid on a wound that's infected with a flesh-eating bacteria. I mean, it's going to cover it up for a while, but the problem's going to show up again. And so then even in Oklahoma, with our state question that we're going to be facing, it has this indefinite element to where it's going to raise the minimum wage according to this urban index. So can you talk to this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's a mixed bag as far as, who's pushing it, right? There are, as you say, there is an element of people who are just misinformed. I don't know if they were sleeping through basic high school economics, but they've never seen a supply and demand graph. They don't understand that, when you put in an artificial price floor, which the minimum wage is just a price floor in the market for unskilled labor, that creates, in regular markets, we call that a surplus, right? The supply is there, but the demand is not. But in the market for wages, a surplus is unemployment, right? And so economists, especially like you were talking about, Austrian economists talk about the seen and the unseen. And what is seen in a minimum wage is this increase in wages. But wages are only one aspect, right, of a job, right? So there are the hours worked, which can be adjusted accordingly. There are benefits like healthcare and other kind of fringe benefits. There are working conditions, right? An employer can choose to invest in working conditions that make things safer for employees, or they can forego those things. And so there's certainly an element where some people just don't understand that. And then there's some insidious aspect to this as well, where people don't care because they seem to benefit, right? So big labor is an example of this. A lot of these collective bargaining agreements have what it's called a Me Too clause, where they tie the wages of their union members to the minimum wage, so that if there is a minimum wage, their wages go up. And then we can get into the mechanics of 832 a little bit more later, but if you put an automatic escalator on there, well, then like the union doesn't even have to bargain anymore, because their wages are just going to continue to go up automatically because of what's in law.
Yeah. Well, like many advocates are saying, well, this measure needs to happen because people need to survive. We need to help them thrive, and it's the right thing to do. But here's my question to you is, we're seeing this trend across the country, and like we're going to face it in June here in Oklahoma. But what are some of the statistics, some of the outcomes that we've seen in other states when they've successfully pushed things like this?
Yeah, no, my colleague Curtis Shelton has done a ton of research on this, and he's put it on our website. And so I was looking through yesterday just to kind of look through some of the things that he's put out there. And there was a study that tracked prices from 2008 to 2024. And what it showed was that, and of course, as you and I are going to talk about, right, prices are going up everywhere because of inflation, which is a separate issue from rising prices, right? But from 2008 to 2024, the states that raised their minimum wage to $15 an hour have on average become more expensive at a faster rate than the state of Oklahoma. And by 2024, 7 of the 8 states with a $15 an hour minimum wage were in the top 10 most expensive states to live in. And despite this is what really I think shocked me. Despite not raising its minimum wage, Oklahoma's hourly wages grew faster than any of the states that raised their minimum wage artificially, while maintaining the lower prices than those states did, because we were allowing market forces to dictate wages rather than having some government price floor instituted. And so when like states like Oregon were moving from the 26th most expensive state to the 11th because of their minimum wage laws, Oklahoma actually, while seeing wages increase, dropped from the 42nd most expensive state to 47th. So we're right there. We've got one of the lowest costs of living in the country. All the while, wages have actually continued to go up, not artificially, not by government mandate, but just by letting market forces do their thing.
Yeah. Well, and so you kind of answered that question of should governments stay out of the business of wage controls? Very similar to price controls. Any other thoughts on that?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not a winning argument to go out there to the masses and talk about how the minimum wage should be zero. There should be no minimum wage. Of course, I'm probably about to break like a cardinal rule of TV, but I've got like a poster of all the Austrian economists in my office. So like I'm there with you all. Yeah. It's not a winning message when you start talking about this sort of thing with everyday people. But that is where I stand, and but I also will recognize that in Henry Hazlitt's book Economics in One Lesson, right, he has a whole chapter on the minimum wage, and one of the things that he talks about is that you can minimize the negative effects of a minimum wage law by just making it small and making it gradual. In fact, I mentioned Arkansas. Arkansas and Missouri are both recent minimum wage increasers, if I can say it that way. Missouri did do 15, but but Arkansas only did 11. And so it'll be interesting to see over the next couple of years if Arkansas goes the way of California and Oregon and Washington, or if the fact that theirs was gradual and probably just made the floor what was already standard, if they can avoid some of those consequences. So I'll be interested to watch that to some degree, because I am willing to admit that while all minimum wages or minimum wage laws are a price floor and arguably should not exist, doing something gradual and small is better than a big jump and something that is going to have a much bigger splash in the marketplace.
Yeah, and we'll dive into more of my thoughts here, but the reason why I guess my message has been and I don't know if I'm selling it right, but my overall goal is to let people know that the reason why wages aren't holding up and they have to increase all the time is due to how our monetary system is structured, and that the greater injustice is actually how our money comes into existence and why that leads to inflation. So am I off there, do you think?
No, not at all. I mean, this is the place to have that conversation, right? Because I constantly have to battle, and at some level you just sort of give up the fight at some point, because having the discussion is not worth the time it takes to get there. But this is the right place to have it, right? But I try to explain to people, rising prices are the effect of inflation. They are not inflation, right? Like, you and I know that inflation is an increase in the supply of money that's only possible because we don't have a hard currency. Yeah. We have a fiat currency that can be artificially adjusted at any time by the whim of unelected bureaucrats at the Fed. Now, again, having that conversation with like regular everyday people who are more concerned with like getting their kids to soccer practice and just like working their job, that's hard. But we can have that conversation here.
Yeah, when we come back, we're going to go deeper into that. I really appreciate you diving in with me and nerding out, Ryan. So we'll be right back after this break. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It is round 3, segment 3 of the Money Block. And if you were curious, we're syndicated coast to coast here on America on Biz TV Network. And man, today we have a great conversation. Yes, we typically talk about Bitcoin, crypto. We talk about the technology. We talk about the monetary policy, trends that are taking place. But today is a little different. We're going to be talking about minimum wage, because it's a topic that a lot of people are talking about because they just, especially if they're starting out, maybe they are a student, maybe they work part-time, who knows? But people are realizing that their dollar is not going as long. It doesn't buy as much as it has in the past. And this conversation around what is money, where does it come from, what gives it value? Well, that's why we do this show. But there is a trend in America about lawmakers and citizens wanting to raise the minimum wage. But is it the right idea? Is it a Band-Aid on a deeper problem? Well, we're going to find out today. But also to remind you, if some of these topics, some of these ideas that we maybe mention kind of go over your head and you're like, man, I really want to learn more about that. Well, you can scan this QR code right here. It pops up on the screen. Get out your phone, scan it, because it is a free download of my Amazon bestselling book, Foundations for Liberty. It's my way of saying thank you for tuning in, and it'll give you the ideas, tools, and principles to prepare you for the future when it comes to liberty in your life, but also liberty for your money. All right, well, let's pick it up here. On the line, I have a wonderful guest. He comes from an organization that I'm very fond of. Actually, was a product of one of their programs, Fears Fellowship. And but this gentleman, his name is Ryan Haynie, and he's with an organization called the Oklahoma Council of Public Affairs. He's the VP of Legal Affairs. And Ryan, I want to pick up our conversation here. We're going to touch a little bit more into the Oklahoma thing. We're going to talk nationally, but here in Oklahoma, June 16th, we have a state question that we have to vote on, which is going to raise the minimum wage. Can you explain the Oklahoma measure and how it's going to be rolled out if it passes?
Yes. So right now, Oklahoma does not have a different minimum wage than the federal minimum wage. So the federal minimum wage set by Congress is, I think, $7.25 an hour. For context, you can't. I don't know anywhere that isn't paying more than that, with the exception of like wait staff who are like tipped workers, right? Who still have to make that, but they tend to make much more than that because of tips. What 832 would do if it passes is within a couple of years, it would more than double the minimum wage to $15 an hour. And if all it did was stop there, that may be a little bit higher than, what we might call like an equilibrium wage for low-skilled labor in Oklahoma. It probably wouldn't be that big of a deal, right? But it doesn't just do that. It also has what I call an automatic escalator, which ties the minimum wage to a consumer price index that's put together by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and will continue to increase the minimum wage every single year in perpetuity if you assume, like you and I do, that the federal government is going to continue to have targeted inflation at least of 2%, 2 to 3%, if not much higher inflation. So that CPI index is going to continue to go, and consumer price index is going to continue to go up year after year, meaning Oklahoma's minimum wage will go up year after year. But adding insult to injury, that consumer price index is tied to urban wages in massive large cities. So, the farmer who employs a couple of farmhands in rural Oklahoma is going to have the minimum wage that he can pay to farmhands tied to, quite frankly, the absurd policies of big leftist cities like Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, San Francisco, and Seattle. I can't fathom how silly that is, right? I mean, like that doesn't make any sense. But that's what people are going to vote on. And quite frankly, I think that's the part that people are unaware of. A lot of people are like, what's the big deal? It's just $15 an hour. Yeah. And I'm like, no, the big deal is it's $15 an hour plus whatever until Jesus comes back, right? It's massive.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what's insane is, it also targets certain exemptions, right?
So it takes out some exemptions like farmers. It takes out people that work sort of like in domestic roles. But
what's weird though is these exemptions, it's like some of the jobs that are being displaced because of automation through artificial intelligence. Things are becoming more efficient, cheaper, faster to do it this way. Do you feel like if this passes in Oklahoma and maybe other states as well, and this trend continues, will we see a place where we're just shooting ourselves in the foot, making things faster to get rid of jobs because automation is just going to grow?
That's exactly right. And, I'm a tech optimist. So, you won't see me fighting, putting in a data center or whatever. I think that AI is going to change the game in a lot of industries, healthcare. I mean, frankly, my own industry, like the legal profession, I think is going to be very disrupted by artificial intelligence. And to, by and large, innovation is great, right? Like we love innovation. We want innovation. We want things to become more efficient. In a world with hard currency, where we didn't have like targeted inflation, innovation would lead to price drops, like decreases in price, right? Like how great would that be? Like,
because people don't realize that, like, the natural state of the free market and entrepreneurship is for prices to go down when you're using sound hard money, because it's like deflationary is not a boogeyman if you got the right form of money. In fact, you want things to get cheaper. Right.
I am not a deflation phobic, or I'm not deflation phobic. And so, people always talk about like rising prices. I'm like, how about lower prices? How wonderful would that be? But in any event, it's just it will continue to go up because that's the stated policy of the federal government.
Yeah, and we only have like about a minute left on this segment here, but do you think it's a fair assumption that when people are going to vote on matters like this, on the state question, they're not factoring in this idea that, I want to live better. I want to secure my job. I want to make more, whatever the case might be. They're not realizing that they're just going to speed up their demise in losing certain jobs because it's more motivation for businesses to be like, well, if I'm going to have to pay this much, I'm most certainly going to move to automation.
Yeah, no, that's right. And that's what I was wanting to get to a second ago, which is that if you move at the speed of the market, the disruption will be minimal. Right. I mean, if you think about like the automated teller machine, it did not completely replace tellers like everybody thought was going to happen. In fact, what it did is it led to like a bank being able to have 2 or 3 branches in a community where they had only been able to have 1. Right. But what I worry about is by artificially pushing people into this before it makes economic sense, you're going to speed up the process of automation, and that's going to be very disruptive.
Yeah, it is. All right, well, guys, we're going to get ready to go to break here, but just a reminder, if you want to learn more about this idea of sound money, hard money, Austrian economics, well, be sure to download my book as a free gift. It's Foundations for Liberty, my way of saying thank you for tuning in. I guarantee you're going to walk away learning something that you can apply to your life, not just in personal freedom, but maybe in your finances as well. Because I know that at the end of the day with this AI stuff, the winners are not the workers, it's the asset holders, especially when we have a fiat money that we're operating with. All right, guys, we'll be right back after this break. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are back in action with the Money Block, America's Bitcoin-focused, sound money-focused TV radio show. That's right, we are syndicated coast to coast on Biz TV Network, and we're here to enlighten you, to educate, and to help you understand the problems at hand when it comes to why is it that your dollar won't buy as much as it used to? Where does money come from? What gives it value? I love having these conversations, and the person that we have on today also enjoys these conversations. But before I bring him back on, I just want to remind you guys that if you want to go deeper into this idea of sound money, and economics and liberty, well, you can download my Amazon best-selling book, Foundations for Liberty. My way of saying thank you for tuning in. It's a great little read, about 100 pages. I guarantee you'll digest it. You'll understand some of these ideas we're talking about. But I'm going to pick it up here. On the line, we've got a gentleman, Ryan Haynie. He is the VP of Legal Affairs with an organization here in my backyard in Oklahoma. It's called Oklahoma Council of Public Affairs, OCPA. Ryan, I want to pick up the conversation here. You know, we talked a little bit about the Oklahoma State Question 832. We've got to vote on here in June. We've talked about how there's legislation, other initiatives that have spread across America that are around this topic, these ideas of raising the minimum wage. And we've talked about maybe some of the problems that this might cause. But let's think about it this way. I wrote an op-ed recently, and it just trying to paint the picture for the everyday person to realize that if we were to just go back to sound money, something that is limited in supply, something that, is a fair form of money, because both the user and the creator have to spend time, labor, and energy to bring it into existence or to use it. People think of gold. They think of silver. They think of Bitcoin, like I do as well. And we could get into that in a whole nother episode. But let's think of it this way. In the 1950s and 60s, you had a minimum wage that was like roughly $1.25, and it was paid in quarters that were made out of real silver. And what's funny is if you were to take that melt value of those silver quarters, that $1.25, it would almost equate to a $60 to $65 minimum wage as far as purchasing power goes. I'm not advocating we move the minimum wage standard to $60. Don't get me there, but I'm just trying to point out the root problem here, which is the thing that we face that ills us is the fact that we're using a fast, easy money that leads to debt, inflation, and just robs us through hidden taxation. So do you think painting this picture to realizing like, hey, raising the minimum wage is putting a Band-Aid on something much deeper, is that a hard concept, a hard thing to educate people to understand, like, hey, you're attacking the wrong thing?
It is hard. And, but it's worth doing, and it's hard because, for a number of reasons. Let's start with our education system has totally failed us. When I went through university and studied business, all the economics professors were Keynesian. they're all pro central bank. They're all pro inflation, so that we can have steady prices, right? Like, who wants steady prices? I want prices to go down. But yeah, I mean, the education system is run by Marxists, and it pushes sort of it pushes Marxist theories out, and so we can't be surprised when people are ignorant of this sort of stuff. The central bank is taught as they only teach it as, for by and large, as a lender of last resort, right? It's there to save banks. It's there to keep us from another Great Depression. The insidious aspects of inflation and the business cycles, and how but
they'll also become the buyer of last resort at the end game.
Yes, right, exactly. And so they lead us through these boom bust cycles that. Frankly, the boom bust cycle will always happen, but it will be in targeted areas. It won't be economy wide across the entire economy. And so the education system is a big part of it. Like, we've got to take back education and make sure that sound economics is taught, and so that people understand sound monetary theory. But it's also more than that, right? Like, even for people like you and I who get it, there's also a sense of, but we are a remnant, right? It's like there are so few people. Like, austerity is dead. Like, I'm sympathetic to the people who want to just throw up their hands and say, like, yeah, I get it. Inflation is the problem, but inflation isn't going anywhere. Inflation is here to stay. Won't somebody think of the wars? How are we going to fund all these wars if we don't have inflation? So I want to be sympathetic to those people who are who maybe want to understand or do understand or have some sense of, well, inflation is the root problem, but both parties do it, and it seems to not be something that anybody in power has any real desire to fix. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, they're jumping off a bridge. It looks fun. Let's do it too. Like, that's kind of. But the end game is always the same historically, and that's why I'm saying we're going to, as a generation, face a place where it's going to be inevitable. Whether you call it a reset, a default, a restructuring, whatever, we're going to have to do something as a country and as a people in order to build faith and confidence and restore this even sound governance. I mean, because the form of money that we have now encourages larger debt, larger budgets, more government expansion, and it's like that only leads to more pain and suffering. So that's personal opinion, and historically that seems to be true too.
Yeah, and there's really no desire by the people that we elect to go do anything about it. I mean, like, if you briefly talk about, like, Doge, right? I mean, Doge, I always thought that Doge was exaggerated in, like, what it could save the American taxpayer and save the budget.
Because the math is still not going to math.
That's exactly right. But there wasn't even a desire to, like, codify Doge cuts.
Yeah.
So the next administration, if it doesn't agree with this one, is just going to go back and we'll be back at square one. So I'm not a black pillar. I don't want to seem like one, but I am sympathetic to the people who are like, well, look, we got to do something, because nobody's doing anything about sort of the root causes of inflation. And what I hope people would understand is we got to keep talking, got to keep educating people on inflation and on sound money, while also not doing something that is only going to cause further harm, because minimum wage laws harm the people that they are designed to help. Yep. And we can talk more about that if you want, but it is not a helpful tool.
Yeah, you can touch on that.
Yeah, no, thanks. And so I guess what I would say is the minimum wage is not going to really affect you and I all that much. It's not going to affect, and I want to, when I say the market for unskilled labor, I don't mean that pejoratively. I just mean that if you have some kind of certificate or education or training program, if you're a certified forklift driver, or you've got a license as a plumber or an electrician, or you got a teaching certificate, you're not making minimum wage or anywhere close to it, right? and it's not going to really affect those people. The people that are going to lose jobs are the people on the margins. They are the people in the unskilled labor market. They are the teenagers, the young people who don't have a certificate or some sort of license or whatever, and they're just learning how to show up on time and how to work a shift and sort of those soft skills, how to interact with customers, those sorts of things. And we rely on that to teach people sort of basic job skills. And then what we hope is that they will get some sort of certification, some sort of license, some sort of skill. Because I want to have as few licenses as possible, but you have to develop some sort of marketable skill that's going to allow you to then go on and make more money. And so again, those people are not going to be affected by minimum wage. It's the people who are already in those jobs on the margins that are going to be the ones in the breadline, right? I mean, and that's what I think is so terrible about this whole thing is that yes, prices are going up, but this is not going to help that. It's going to cause prices to go up even more. Yep. And people are going to be in a worse position to deal with it.
Yeah, it's like they're putting a noose around their own neck. And I don't mean to be mean, but it's like that's why education is so important. And to your point, it's just not there and that's why I am so passionate about doing shows like this to try to reach the everyday person to say, hey, listen, if I can explain this into a very simple way for you to understand, and I'm not downputting anybody here. I'm simply saying it sounds confusing because they use a lot of jargon, but if you really boil it down to human nature and basic economics, it starts to make sense.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, we've only got a couple more seconds on this segment, but when we come back, I got a couple more questions for Ryan. So, Ryan, I hope you got your thinking cap on. But anyways, again, if you want to learn more about this, scan that QR code, download my Amazon bestselling book, Foundations for Liberty. It'll help give you a primer on this topic and where I come from on understanding this whole space. So stay put, stay tuned. We've got more with our wonderful guest, Ryan from OCPA. I promise you, stick around because we're not done with this wonderful, powerful conversation. All right, we'll be right back after this break. AI is here, money is changing, but freedom has never been more important. I'm Matthew J. Moore, the Money Block host on Biz TV, Amazon bestseller, and Bitcoin policy advisor. Book my up to 60-minute talk, Redefining Wealth and Freedom God's Way. I'll teach your church, business, or civic group how to secure money, freedom, and faith in the digital age. This is urgent, so I'm slashing my fee from $1,000 to $500. Cover my travel, and I'm there. Scan the QR code now. Spots are filling fast. What does it mean to be physically, spiritually, and financially free? The right to life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness, these were the ideas that made America. But what happens to these ideas when America's money becomes compromised? What do you do when the very thing that you're working for day after day is fundamentally designed to enslave you? Whether it was a conspiracy or not, you won't believe what is about to happen in this country. Arm yourself today with the truth and build your life on the foundations for liberty. Rediscover freedom in the 21st century and grab a copy of my Amazon best-selling book, Foundations for Liberty. For just $11.99, you can support this radio show by finding a copy on Amazon or by going to mattjmoore.com. Again, that's mattjmoore.com. Don't wait, because freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Final round of the Money Block. Man, it's been a good show so far. Great conversation with our guest. And if you're curious about why your dollar doesn't buy as much as it used to, why there's this trend to push up minimum wage, well, this is the episode for you. Because yes, even though we've been talking about Bitcoin and technology throughout other episodes, this is a part of the conversation that has to be had. We talk about money. We talk about how people live, how they get by, and what you can do to protect and prepare yourself in the coming future. But today's guest, we've got on the line from an organization called Oklahoma Council of Public Affairs. It's been a great convo. Ryan, he's the VP of Legal Affairs at the Oklahoma Council of Public Affairs. But Ryan, I want to pick up our conversation here. We got limited amount of time in this last segment here, but since we are a Bitcoin-focused show, and you are also a technology enthusiast like myself, do you have any opinions about things like Bitcoin?
No, not. I don't have any like hot takes or anything like that. I own some Bitcoin, or I don't know I don't know if that's even correct to say. I own a Bitcoin ETF.
Okay. You got exposure to it, yeah.
Yeah. So, and I used to own Bitcoin in like a Robinhood account, and then I decided I made myself, I guess, less liquid in it, but drastically increased my holdings and exposure to it. So I own an ETF in one of my IRAs. The thing about Bitcoin, I love it because obviously it's not controlled by the government. I think that's wonderful. The more we can get government out of money, the better. Ooh. As far as I'm concerned.
Oh, you're speaking my love language here.
Whether or not it's a viable solution in the short term, I tend to be a little skeptical on, only because one of the biggest factors about like what can be money is something that's widely accepted, and we don't see it as widely accepted as I think is going to be required for it to be a part of the solution long term. When you think about just the vast amount of transactions that happen on a daily basis, it's just a small sliver that takes place in Bitcoin, and obviously I'd love to see that increased. I
think you're onto something here, and because I tell people, I'm like, hey, listen, if you're going to be investing in Bitcoin, don't be the guy that spends 10,000 Bitcoins on 2 large pizzas. You're going to kick yourself and hate yourself later, and the reason being is because when something like Bitcoin emerges from the free market, from the grass up and instead bottom up instead of the top down, it has to go through these stages of essentially being first a collectible, then a store of value, then a medium of exchange, and then a true measure of wealth. And right now, we've just entered into this store of value phase, and you're going to start, in my opinion, seeing nation states, corporations, individuals are already doing it, but using Bitcoin as a way to beat inflation, as a way to save, as a way to have a store of value. And it's obviously been the best performing asset in the last 10 years. But I would say that in order for Bitcoin to move into that medium of exchange place, the adoption curve, we're still at the very not the very bottom, but we're still early on the adoption curve. And as more people use or get Bitcoin as a store of value, then we might see in the future a place where we use it on a transactional basis. But we have to have a mass adoption at that point. Yeah. And even the technological solutions, we're going to have a multiple layer solution, because not all the transactions are going to be done on the base layer. Just like how the internet was built in layers. Sure, we could come up with better protocols, but instead of just uprooting and getting rid of, the old stuff, we just built on top of it. And so Bitcoin's kind of do that, in my opinion. But you're going to open up a can of worms, and I won't stop talking. So let's go in a direction here where I want to get your thoughts on this. As we move into a highly technical AI-driven world, what do you see that maybe most people aren't seeing when it comes to things like work, minimum wage? Are there things that you're preparing for that maybe we should be considering?
Well, and I wish I had a great answer for that, because it's one of the things I sleep very soundly at night, but one of the things that does keep me up, I have 3 young children. I say that the oldest one just turned 14. I don't know if that counts as young. She doesn't think it's young. But I have 3 children, and their education and their futures are obviously very important to me. And my son told me the other day that he wants to be a lawyer like his dad. And I'm like, I think that's great, but I don't know what this profession looks like in 20 years. It could be drastically different in ways that I don't know that I can fully comprehend. And so, I think shows like this are great to expose people to to sort of experts who maybe, I don't think anyone has a crystal ball, but I do think there are certain people who are really good about seeing the future a little more clearly and making predictions based on both past events and what they see developing. I got to admit, as a parent, like I'm sort of lost. Like like I said earlier, I'm an optimist as far as I think I'm not black pilling. I don't want to be like a doomsday guy. The only thing I think that I see differently than the average person is that I see, I think a lot of people that are thinking about it on a surface level think about just chatbots and silly videos. And I think AI is a lot more than that. It has the chance to, especially once robotics catch up. I mean, I think the healthcare profession is going to be massively changed, I think, for the better in a lot of ways. I mean, again, imagine once robotics catches up. Imagine having a surgeon who never sleeps, who doesn't need sleep, who never has a bad day, who learns from every surgery and gets better every single time, and it doesn't get in a fight with his or her spouse, right? It's like that's pretty incredible. And then on top of that, does everything with pinpoint precision. I'm very optimistic, but I see a lot of tech doom talk from people who think it's just, silly videos and chatbots. And I would, if I had anything to say on that, I would just encourage people to think bigger.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's why we do this show, have conversations like this, get people thinking, because there's great opportunity, but things are going to change massively, really quickly here in the future, and we need to be thinking about this right now. But in 30 seconds, I'm going to say, hey, if you live in Oklahoma, state question 832, vote no. That's my personal opinion. But
Thank you. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But any final closing thoughts? 20 seconds.
No, the primary, if you're in Oklahoma, is on June 16th. Vote no. If you live in a state that doesn't have this yet, be on the alert and be on the watch and make sure you're ready to fight it.
Yep, that's all. That's all we can do. All right, guys. Well, that's all the time we have right now. Appreciate you tuning in. We'll see you same time, same place. Adios.
The opinions and suggestions expressed on this program are solely those of the participants and are not necessarily endorsed by program sponsors or any station, media company, or platform broadcasting this program. This program is a product of More Media, LLC. The information in this broadcast is not intended as investment, tax, or financial advice. Matthew Moore is not a licensed investment advisor and speaks solely from his experience and opinions. All information in this broadcast is for entertainment or educational purposes only. Matthew Moore, More Media, LLC, and the company or platform broadcasting this program is not responsible for the success or failure of any person's investment decisions or purchases. Matthew Moore, More Media, LLC, and the company or platform broadcasting this program makes no and expressly disclaims all representations, warranties, and guarantees with respect to this broadcast and its sponsors. Investing in any market is inherently risky and can be financially dangerous. Invest at your own risk.